Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about how to build ransomware resilience program from scratch. As you know, in last 2 years and 3 years, ransomware attack is basically increasing by 100%, and a lot of companies got impacted with ransomware. And if you talk about the today cybercrime, ransomware attack is one of the toppest cybercrime we have in this enterprise. So I thought as a CISO, it is always a challenge for us to build a ransomware resilience program, which is a new thing in the market. So I took this effort and tried to build a framework which can help you to build the ransomware resilience program in your organization. My name is Prabh, and for more information, you can check my LinkedIn profile. Just for a reference, I'm currently working as a VCISO for 3 major startups and 1 established company. And when you're talking about training is something my passion and consulting is something my profession. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so before going to discuss in detail about ransomware resilience programs, let's first understand what is ransomware. So example, like we have a attacker, okay, and this is basically my enterprise. In the enterprise, we have a servers. So now what happened? Attacker gain access to the enterprise, they gain access to the server, and they have access to the data. And what they did, they just encrypt this particular data. When they say encrypt, it means it convert into the different language. And it required key by which they actually encrypt. So key is basically with the attacker and data is basically encrypted and reside in a same server. Now the employee of that company or the owner of the company want to access the data, they cannot able to extract, they cannot able to read because they don't have a key. Key is basically with the attacker. So this is basically called as a ransomware attack. So it is a type of malware that encrypt victim data and demand ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. One thing is that 90% it happens that even you pay ransom, still the data doesn't get decrypted. And most of the time attackers basically ask a ransom in form of Bitcoin. So it is difficult to track from which source they're asking. So it is an attack which is increasingly common in recent year, and they can have a devastating impact on the business of all size. So in this video, we're going to discuss about how to build a ransomware resilience program. I'm not saying like this program or this particular framework can help you to reduce this attack to 0, but at least it reduced to some level, because 100% risk cannot be eliminated and 100% security cannot be achieved. But if you have established process and practice in place, I'm sure you can able to reduce the impact. So let's start with the first part. See, when we're talking about building a ransomware resilience program, it is more like a program tactical in nature. Okay, so we have a step-by-step process. The first step in the program is to establish the cross-functional team. So we need to have a dedicated team. We need to form a dedicated cross-functional team which comprise of the IT, security, legal, operation and management, because tomorrow any kind of an attack happen, so these departments will have their own perspective to handle the issue. And we need to make sure the team has a necessary skill, expertise and authority to implement and manage the ransomware resilience program effectively. See, when it comes to the ransomware, the best way to reduce the impact is frequent backups actually. Okay, we need to have a frequent backups. Now question is, we cannot randomly take a backup of any random data. Okay, so in order to take the backup on a regular basis, we need to first understand the criticality of the business. We need to understand the impact of the business. We need to know the RPO for that. So according to that, I can able to plan my backup strategy. So that is something most important for us. So for that, we need a cross-functional team where the business can basically interact with the IT, or IT is the one which interact with the business. Legal is basically interact with the business. Legal is the one who interact with the IT. Second thing is that it is not possible for me to protect all the data. Suppose this is my server. in which we have a data of all the category. We have a regulated data, we have a PI data, we have a business data. And what hacker did, hacker basically hacked the business data and they encrypt. So they protect from a regulation point of view, but they have not able to protect the business. And with that aspect, okay, we are not able to protect the overall data. So if the data is classified, we know which data is important for the organization, how we need to protect. Until unless we don't have a visibility, we cannot able to apply the controls in terms of encryption, in terms of firewall, in terms of backup frequency also. I know this data is very important, so frequently we need to take a backup of that. We can only take a frequent backup, we can invest in the backup solution when we know the value of the data. That is why we say we need to first identify the critical assets. Okay, because first step is to identify the critical assets that need to be protected from a ransomware, which includes my data, application, system that are essential to the business. Okay, that's the most important thing. Third is basically assess the current state of security. See, it is not necessary that you need to start from a scratch and implementing all the controls and everything. So it is very important to identify what current controls we have in place. For that, what we have to do is we need to conduct a thorough assessment of your organizations. Okay, and analyze the current security posture, which includes my system, processes, and policies. Then you need to identify the vulnerabilities. It's very important to identify the existing vulnerabilities. We need to identify the entry points for the ransomware attack. So this is basically where you can apply the MITRE attack, you can apply the cyber kill chain. So by this, you can able to get the visibility. Even you can perform the pen testing and all that. And the third most important thing in assessing the current state of security is evaluate the effectiveness of the security controls and incident response capability. If tomorrow any attack happen or attacker basically have a persistent access to the system, how frequently, how proactively incident response team and tools can identify the patterns. So that's something we need to assess, and that is why it is part of a current state of security. So we understood this is my current state and this is something is my desired state. Between that, whatever the controls we need to invest, we can take a business approval for that instead of starting from a scratch. Now we are in a stage where we have understood what is the gap we have. The next thing what we have to do is we need to define the program objective and scope. So we need to clearly define what is the objective of the ransomware resilience program, what is the goal, and what is the scope of this program. Now I have a 10 companies or I have a 10 branches. Are we creating this program for all the 10 branches, or are we creating this program for only 3 branches? So that should be part of the scope. Second important thing, which is basically people miss in creating a program objective, is understand the level of protection based on the risk appetite and the value of asset associated with the risk. Because it is basically very important that until unless we don't know the scoping, because we cannot have a ransomware resilience program for an entire organization. We don't have a budget for that. So we need to define the scope, and that scoping is done in this particular stage. Then based on that, we creating a policies and procedures. So actually, we have a dedicated policy for ransomware. Okay, if ransomware attack happen, how to address a ransomware in terms of prevention, detection, response, and recovery. And we also talk about the guideline. According to the ransomware policy, we need to have a secure configuration of a system. We need to have access controls, employee awareness, incident response, data backup, and recover. Because we having a policy and procedure, we can able to establish the governance. Then we need to implement the secure configuration and access controls. Okay, once we have a policy in place, which is help me to build the governance, based on that, I'm going to apply the controls. Now, if I have a generic control, hacker can take the access of the system by the user. See how hacker hack. Hacker basically hack the user credentials, and through that, he hacked the system. That is how he hacks. So if I give a user a principle of least privilege, then even he cannot able to perform the further activity. So example, like there is a system we have, this is my server, and there is a user called as a Joy. Joy basically having a least privilege where he can only view some documents. So if even hacker basically hack his credential, what is the maximum thing hacker can do is view the documents. So it is very, very important that ransomware best practices is create a users with the privilege functions. It means user should be assigned with the least privilege instead of just enabling the administrator credentials. If you see in past, a lot of attack in ransomware happen where the attacker gain access to the system through the root account or admin account. So my suggestion is that create multiple users and for each user you should have a different separate functions. You should not perform, or she should not perform more than that. So enforce strong principle of least privilege. Along with that, also enforce strong password policy, complex password. And if you think some of the servers are very critical, then most important thing you can apply is the MFA, multi-factor authentication. See, it involves cost. So that's why I'm saying analyze the system, analyze the criticality of the system, analyze the sensitivity of the system, and according to that, that specific accounts are configured with MFA. Live example is when you're connecting a VPN from home, it asks for the two-factor authentication along with RSA and all that. But when you are at office and from there you're using a VPN and all that, it doesn't ask for the MFA. So depending upon the threat environment, depending upon the business environment, we enable the security. Along with that, we can use some BIS benchmark, and according to that, we can see what is the adopt appropriate configuration we can have in the system. So that is how you can able to build the configuration controls in the system. One more thing which is basically missing here is you should also introduce a change management process. So any kind of a changes in the configuration, it need to go through a change management process. Then we can deploy and configure the security tool. So when you're talking about deploying and configuring the security tool, example like develop the backup and recovery strategies. Okay, then we can basically deploy IDS, IPS. Okay, then we can use some kind of a host-based firewall to monitor and network traffics. Then we can install some endpoint protection solutions, okay, which is used for analyzing the behavior. We can have an anomaly detection real-time solutions that we can deploy on the network and deploy on the host level. So that is basically for configuration of the security tool. Then on a regular basis, take a backup. I want to spend some time on the backup area because there is a one important matrix we use, which is called as a RPO. RPO basically stands for recovery point objective. What is the meaning? It means acceptable data loss in the case of disaster. So I spoke to business owner one. He said, Prabh, I cannot take a risk even for a 1 minute. It means every 1 minute we have to take a backup. Okay, and there is a business owner to say, we don't have a critical data. Even I lost 2 hours, it is okay. So in every 2 hours, we need to take a backup. Now let's take an example. We have a system 1 and we have a system 2. System 1 is basically business owner 1 and system 2 is business owner 2. So here what happened, every minute we are taking a backup. So even hacker encrypt the data. Still, we already back up the last 1 minute we can restore. And in this case, if 7 a.m. we have taken the backup, the next backup schedule at 9 a.m. So in this case, if hacker hack 8 a.m. data, maximum he hack is basically 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. because before that we already have a backup. And what is the loss we have faced is 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. So RPO strategy is very important when you're dealing with the backups and all that. So develop the backup strategy. Never ever take a backup in a same system. Okay, store always backup in offline. That backup system, backup server should not be connected online. And it should be physically segmented from your production network. And third most important thing is that when you take a backup, suppose when you're talking about here, we have a server 1 and this is basically my offsite. So on a regular basis, when you're moving a backup to the offsite, test the backups also. Try to restore the regular backups. Because when we try to restore, we are focusing on the availability and integrity. So that is something is very important when you're dealing with the backup and recovery strategy. Okay. But my one suggestion is that offline backup should be locally hosted. It should not be connected with the network. And if you have a same building, make sure they are physically segmented. That's the most important thing you need to have. Now, next thing is that once you have a backup strategy, RPO, and based on a RPO, we define the BIA. Next is develop the incident response plan. See, when you're talking about developing an incident response plan, here we need to create a dedicated plan tailored to the ransomware incident. If you think your business is primarily focused on data, you always prone for ransomware and all that. So create a separate plan for the ransomware. Let's take example. We have a lot of incidents. Okay, and we take 2 days average, but we have set the criteria for ransomware kind of incidents. It need to be reported. It need to be mitigated in 2 hours. So we are creating a dedicated incident response matrix for a ransomware incident. Along with that, we can also define the roles, responsibility, communication channel, how to communicate. And then we can also define the escalation metrics. Make sure we can able to protect the weakest link of an organization, which is called employees, perform on a regular basis security awareness training, because their small clicks can bring the organization trouble. So conduct periodic training for the people, do the phishing awareness campaign, and check whether things are working effectively. Along with that, on a regular basis, do the VAPT, okay, perform the security audits, and act promptly on identified vulnerability and weakness to mitigate the risk. And set the KPI and KRI by which you can monitor, review, and improve the functions. So these are basically the step-by-step functions we have that we can use to build the ransomware resilience program. Now the next question is basically, what are the documentations required to have a ransomware resilience program? So first thing we called as a ransomware resilience program charter. Now this charter is basically outline the purpose, objective, scope, responsibility of the program, because if I am the one who going to lead the ransomware resilience system or program in the organization, I need to have evidence. So that evidence is a program charter. It talk about why we are exist. It basically provide the overall, you can say, program structure, governance, and key stakeholder. So let me show you the template of the ransomware resilience program charter. Okay, so let me show you how the program charter look like. So this is basically the program charter. Here, the purpose of the program, establish the proactive. So we give the organization name. Objective has been defined. Okay. Then we talk about the program scope, which include my security infrastructure, employee training, incident response planning, data backup, testing, continuous improvement. Then we talk about the program governance, which include my cross-functional steering committee, then roles and responsibility. Then we talk about the program timelines. What is the program timelines we have? And then we talk about program evaluation reporting. Okay, and then here we have a signing authority. I repeat again, this charter is basically include about the activity, what we do. So we need to give the name of the company. When it is amended, we give the purpose of the program, objective. Objectives can be varies from the organization to organization. Then scope is basically program will encompass of security infrastructure, where we evaluate the organization, employee training. We will train employees related to that on ransomware activities. So that is something is need to be added. Then incident response planning, we talk about established. See, it's not necessary you need to have a separate incident response plan for ransomware. You can amend some of the metrics in your existing incident response function. Then we talk about the data backup recovery testing exercise, how regularly I'm going to test. So the objective of the program charter is to give you idea about how the ransomware resilience program is going to work in the company. Okay, we need to have a dedicated policy. We need to have an incident response plan, not related to the ransomware. Even your existing plan can be part of this repository. But one thing is that when you're talking about your incident response plan, okay, your incident response plan. So this plan is basically outline the procedures to be followed in the event of ransomware incident. It defines the roles and responsibility communication, and it talk about the steps for containment. Then we need to have a backup and recovery policies, security awareness training material. So when I say security awareness training material, it includes the module related to the ransomware, and it basically should cover the topics such as phishing prevention, safe browsing practice, recognizing the social engineering techniques and all that. Then we have a user access control policy, which talk about the principle and practice for granting and managing user access. And it also establishes the guideline for implementing a strong authentication mechanisms, password policies and all that. Along with that, we also have a patch management policies, network and parameter security policy, vendor management, BIA, okay, RTO and RPO. So these are basically the necessary documents we have which talk about. So this document serve as a foundation of a comprehensive ransomware resilience program, and you can customize them and align with your organization specific requirement, industry standards and regulatory obligations. So, but most important thing is that you need to regularly review this. So regularly review and update the document to reflect the evolving threats and lessons that is learned from the incidents and exercise. That's the most important thing. Okay, when I say in this RTO and RPO, we need to set the metrics how soon we need to restore and what is the acceptable data loss we have. So when I deal with RTO, it talk about maximum acceptable downtime and data loss threshold. And when you're talking about RPO, it basically guide the recovery efforts to prioritize how soon we can able to restore the data. So these are the documents we have that is required when you're basically building a ransomware resilience program. The way we build the ISMS program, in which we have a documentation, same like we have a ransomware resilience program which talk about their documentation. Now moving to the next part, which is a very most important thing, is the metrics. See, metrics are very important because when you establish the ransomware resilience program, okay, you need to monitor the program also. You need to measure the program. Okay, and measuring is the essential to assess the effectiveness of your effort. So the first KRI you can set is ransomware incident rate. Okay, so ransomware incident rate is just like a you can set number of ransomware incident experience of for a specific month or specific year or a specific period. So that's something you can set. Because when you basically speak to the senior management or you speak to business, you need to give them a justification why we need to have a program in place. Okay, so if you have this metrics, you can able to measure the frequency, and it is basically help you to identify the trends and pattern in the ransomware attack and measure the success of prevention measure. Second is ransomware detection rate, which talk about the number of ransomware incident detected proactively. Okay, that indicates that effectiveness of the detection controls, ability to identify attacks in an early stage, how to improve. So that is something is basically part of the function. The next important metrics is called as a backup success rate. So when we're talking about the backup success rate, is all about the percentage of the successful backup is planned or reflect the reliability of the backup process and availability of the up-to-date data for recovery purpose. Then we have to see how many phishing awareness completion has been done, post awareness training, how many phishing activities has been done, how many people have clicked on the link. Okay, so we assess the level of employee engagement in the security awareness program. Then we have a patch management compliance. So patch management compliance, all about the percentage of the systems and applications are up to date. Okay, we also measure the effectiveness of the patch management process by reducing the vulnerabilities, how many patch we able to release, how soon we release. So we can have a metrics for that. Along with that, we also have an employee incident reporting rate. How soon employer reporting an incident, how many employees are reporting an incident, what is the timeline. Okay, so this is reflect the level of employee awareness and engagement in the organization security efforts. Along with that, we also see user access review completion rate, because on regular basis we need to reset the passwords. We need to have a regular assessment of checking the effectiveness, how we ensure the principle of least privilege, how many users are configured with the privilege of least privilege. Then security control effectiveness is there. Then incident response plan testing is there. How frequently we done the testing, how many time we done the testing, how many time it was passed, how many time it failed. So we can able to assess the readiness of the incident response team and identify the area for improvement in the plan. So these kind of a metrics you basically set by which you can able to measure the function. Okay, that's the most important thing we have. Along with that, I have another metrics which I will discuss in my next series with the KPI and KRI, which give you the better visibility. So this is all from my side, team. Do let me know how do you find this video, and do let me know, shall I bring more videos like that in my YouTube channel, and share your suggestion in the comment box. If you're still not subscribed to the channel, click on the bell icon, subscribe to my channel so you get the update of my new video. Thank you so much, family. Take care.